I still remember the way her eyes found mine that night. Wide, unblinking, and carrying something I couldn't quite name. Fear? Desperation? Or maybe guilt? She didn't move at first. She just stood there in the dim light of her doorway, one hand gripping the edge of the frame like she was holding herself up. I was about to speak when her lips parted, and in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "Don't tell my husband you're here." My heart dropped, not because of what she said, but because of the way she said it, like she was confessing a sin or maybe begging for protection. The kind of tone that makes you realize you've just stepped into something bigger than yourself. See, I wasn't supposed to be there that night. Not at her house, not in that neighborhood, not at her door. But somehow, every wrong turn I'd taken over the past few weeks had led me straight into this moment. And as she stood there, staring at me like I was both her only hope and her greatest mistake, I knew nothing about my life was going to stay the same. She finally let me in. The hallway smelled faintly of old wood and lavender, but beneath it was something else, like the lingering trace of a storm that had just passed. She moved carefully, quietly, as though each step might wake something or someone we weren't supposed to disturb. I followed, my pulse hammering, every nerve in me screaming questions I didn't dare ask. Why had she called me here? Why did she look so shaken? And most of all, why couldn't her husband know? We sat in her living room, the lights turned low. She didn't face me at first. Instead, she stared at the window, where the curtains swayed just slightly from a draft. She held her arms tight across her chest, like she was holding secrets inside her body, afraid they might spill out if she let go. When she finally looked at me, I saw something raw in her face. She wanted to speak, to explain, but the words trembled on the edge of her lips. And then, for a long moment, there was silence. A silence so heavy I could hear the tick of the clock on the wall. And in that silence, I realized this wasn't just a simple request. She wasn't hiding me because of suspicion or gossip. No, there was something much darker at play. Something that made her glance toward the stairs every few seconds, like she expected footsteps to come crashing down at any moment. I leaned forward, my voice low. "What's going on?" She swallowed hard. Her hands shook as she reached for mine, her grip ice-cold, desperate. Her mouth open like she was finally ready to tell me everything. But just as the first word left her lips, we both heard it, the sound of footsteps above us. The footsteps above us froze her in place. For a second, she didn't even breathe. Her hand tightened around mine, and I could feel her pulse racing through her skin. Then, just as quickly as they came, the sounds faded. The house fell quiet again, leaving only the low hum of the fridge somewhere in the kitchen. She let go, stood up, and pulled the curtain shut a little tighter before turning back to me. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered, though she was the one who'd called me. Her name was Claire. We'd met months earlier in the most ordinary of ways, at the grocery store, of all places. She was standing in the cereal aisle, staring at the rows like she'd forgotten what she came for. I made a dumb joke about how choosing between too many boxes was harder than filing taxes, and for the first time, she laughed. That laugh stayed with me. From then on, I kept running into her. At the park, at the cafe down the street. At first, I thought it was just coincidence, but soon I realized she always seemed relieved to see me. Like my presence gave her a break from something she never spoke about. She was in her late 30s, beautiful in that quiet, unpolished way. No show, no performance, just someone carrying a kind of weight the world didn't notice. It wasn't long before I learned she was married. To Daniel, older than her by nearly 15 years. A man with sharp eyes and a sharper temper, if the rumors were true. She never said much about him, but whenever his name came up, I noticed the way her smile faltered. Still, she never crossed any lines. Neither did I. Our talks were casual, books, movies, little things. But underneath, I felt there was something more she wanted to say, something caught in her throat every time our eyes met. Then, 2 nights ago, I got her message. Just a single line. "Can you come over? Please." And now, here I was, sitting in her living room, heart pounding while she looked at me like I was the only person she could trust. I cleared my throat. "Claire, why did you call me here?" She hesitated, pacing the room, rubbing her arms like she was cold though the house was warm. "Finally," she said, "because I don't know how much longer I can keep this secret." Her words hit me like a blow. My chest tightened. A secret? From her husband? From the world? From me? I wanted to press her, to demand answers, but the way her voice cracked made me stop. She wasn't ready to let it out all at once. Instead, she walked to the mantel, picked up a small framed photo of her and Daniel. She stared at it for so long, her hands trembling, before setting it back down like it burned her. "Everything you think you know about him," she whispered, "isn't true." Before I could ask what she meant, a sudden creak came from upstairs, louder this time, like someone shifting their weight, listening. Claire's eyes darted to mine. "Don't say a word," she mouthed. And in that instant, I realized whatever secret she was hiding, we weren't the only ones in this house who knew. The silence after that creak was unbearable. Every second stretched thin, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Claire's eyes didn't move from mine, but her lips parted just enough to form the words again. "Don't say a word." I sat frozen on the couch, trying to make sense of what was happening. Why had she called me here if her husband was upstairs? Why bring me into her home when one wrong sound could blow everything apart? My mind spun, but underneath the confusion was a sharper edge: fear. She paced once, twice, then suddenly stopped in front of me. Her voice was low, trembling, urgent. "You think you know him. You don't. He's not who he pretends to be." "Claire," I whispered, "what are you talking about?" Her hands twisted in each other, restless, nervous. "He watches everything. He checks my phone, my emails. He..." She cut herself off, glancing at the ceiling. The floorboards above gave a soft groan, like someone shifting their weight. She flinched. I felt my pulse pounding in my throat. If Daniel was really up there, was he listening right now? Did he know I was here? Claire leaned closer, her face inches from mine, her breath shaky. "I don't have anyone else. I can't tell the police. If he finds out I've said anything..." She shook her head, eyes glistening. "Promise me you won't leave me alone in this." Her desperation cut through me. I wanted to promise, to pull her out of whatever nightmare she was trapped in. But the words stuck in my throat. Because in the corner of my eye, I caught it, the shadow. At the top of the staircase, just barely visible through the crack in the dim hallway light, a figure lingered. Still, watching. For a moment, I wasn't sure if my eyes were playing tricks on me. But Claire saw it too. Her hand clamped onto mine so tight it hurt, her nails digging into my skin. She didn't look away, didn't blink. "Don't move," she whispered, her voice barely a thread of sound. And then, the shadow at the stairs shifted, one slow step forward. The figure on the stairs didn't move again. It just lingered there, a darker shape in the dim glow spilling from the hallway light. My chest tightened. I couldn't see a face, couldn't tell if it was Daniel, or if my own fear was turning shadows into monsters. Claire's grip on my hand was unrelenting. Her nails dug into my skin, her breath shallow, ragged. She kept her eyes fixed upward, like if she blinked, everything would come crashing down. "Claire," I whispered, but the sound felt too loud, even at that volume. Her head shook sharply, silencing me. Then, almost as suddenly as it appeared, the shadow retreated. A faint creak followed, a slow step back, then another, until it melted into the darkness above. Claire released a shaky breath, but her hands still trembled against mine. She leaned in, her voice barely audible. "Do you see now? He knows. He always knows." I wanted to ask how long this had been going on, why she had called me instead of anyone else, but the raw fear in her voice silenced those questions. She wasn't just worried about being caught. She was terrified of what would happen if she was. The air in the room felt charged, heavy, like a storm pressing down before it breaks. My eyes darted around. The door, the window, any possible escape route. While Claire seemed caught between wanting to tell me everything and being too scared to say a word. "Claire, listen to me," I said carefully, keeping my voice steady, though my insides were screaming. "If you're in danger, you need to leave. Right now. With me." Her eyes glistened. For a moment, I thought she might agree. But then she shook her head, clutching her arms around herself like armor. "It's not that simple. You don't understand what he's capable of." A chill ran through me. Not what he might do. Not what she feared. She'd said what he's capable of. Like she had seen it, lived it. She stood suddenly, pacing the room with her fingers pressed to her temples, whispering under her breath. I couldn't catch the words, but the panic in her movements was enough. Finally, she stopped and turned toward me. Her eyes were wet, her face pale. I thought I could handle it. I thought if I just stayed quiet, it would pass. But it's getting worse. And now, her voice broke. "Now you're here, And if he knows. The words choked off as the floor above us groaned again. Heavy, deliberate steps this time, coming closer to the staircase. Claire's head snapped upward. She whispered so fast it was almost one word. He's coming. My pulse spiked, hammering in my ears. Every instinct screamed to move, to run, but my legs felt locked to the floor. Claire rushed to the lamp, switching it off until we were cloaked in shadows. Only the faint glow from the streetlight slipping through the curtain. The steps stopped. Silence. Then, a voice, deep, steady, too calm, drifted down from upstairs. Claire. Her entire body went rigid. She looked at me with eyes wide as glass. And in that silence, I realized the moment I'd been dreading all along was here. Claire. The voice came again, but this time, it wasn't sharp or angry. It was almost gentle, too gentle. The kind of calm that doesn't comfort you, but chills you because you know it's masking something else. Claire's breath caught. She didn't answer. She only clutched my arm, her fingers trembling. The floorboards creaked. One step, then another. He was coming down. And that's when I saw it. On the small table by the couch, half hidden under a folded newspaper. A phone. Claire's phone. But the screen lit up just then, buzzing silently with a notification. My eyes flicked to it, and what I read made my blood run cold. It wasn't a message from a friend. It wasn't spam. It was a draft. A draft email, unsent but saved. The subject line burned into my brain. If something happens to me, it was Daniel. Before I could react, Claire's eyes widened, following my gaze. She lunged forward, snatched the phone, and pressed it to her chest, shaking her head violently, as if I'd just uncovered something forbidden. Upstairs, Daniel's voice drifted again, this time sharper. Claire, who are you talking to? And in that instant, I realized, he already knew I was here. The sound of Daniel's footsteps grew heavier, closer, until his shadow spilled down the staircase. Claire stood frozen in the dark, clutching the phone to her chest like a shield. My heart pounded so hard I thought he would hear it before he even saw us. And then he appeared. Tall, broad-shouldered, his face half lit by the glow from upstairs. His eyes moved straight past Claire and locked onto me. There was no surprise in them. No confusion. Just the quiet certainty of a man who already knew everything. Well, he said softly, I wondered how long before you'd show up. Claire's hand shook as she reached for me, whispering, Please, don't. But Daniel didn't move closer. He only leaned on the railing, his expression calm, almost polite. You think she called you here for help? His voice dripped with something between pity and cruelty. She didn't tell you, did she? I frowned, my throat tight. Tell me what? Claire's face crumpled, torn between fear and desperation. Don't listen to him. But Daniel's words cut her off like a blade. She's been planning this. The little secret emails. The staged meetings. You weren't her rescue. His gaze burned through me. You were her cover. The room spun. My stomach dropped. I looked at Claire, but she couldn't meet my eyes. Her silence was louder than any denial. Claire. My voice cracked. Tears welled in her eyes as she shook her head, whispering, I didn't mean for it to go this far. Daniel stepped down, his voice low and deliberate. She wanted you here. So when everything collapsed, I'd be the monster and she'd be free. Claire sobbed, clutching her phone tighter, her entire body trembling. I couldn't tell anymore if it was him I should fear, or her. For a breathless moment, the three of us stood locked in silence, the weight of the truth pressing down. Then, without warning, Claire hurled the phone to me. Take it, she cried. Take it and get out. I caught it, stunned, but before I could move, Daniel lunged forward, fury breaking through the calm at last. And in that flash of chaos, one thought consumed me. I still didn't know which of them was telling the truth. Daniel's hand shot out, but I stumbled back, clutching the phone tight against my chest. Claire screamed his name, not in anger, not in love, but in something broken between the two. The room felt like it would collapse under the weight of everything that hadn't been said. For a moment, time froze. His eyes were locked on me, hers on him, and I, stuck in the middle, finally understood what this night had really been about. It wasn't about me. Not completely. I was just the witness. The excuse. The piece of the puzzle they both needed to make their story work. Stop, Claire finally cried, her voice cracking through the tension. She stepped between us, her arms out like a barrier. This ends tonight. Daniel's chest heaved, rage flickering beneath the surface, but then his eyes shifted to the phone in my hand. The unsent email. The evidence she'd been too afraid to release. He realized in that instant what it meant. That no matter what he said, no matter how much control he thought he had, her voice could still outlive him. He backed away slowly, his face hardening, his silence louder than any threat. Without another word, he turned and walked up the stairs, each step shaking the floor. The bedroom door slammed, rattling the walls. Claire collapsed onto the couch, sobbing into her hands. I stood frozen, my own pulse finally slowing, the phone heavy in my grip. When she looked up at me, her eyes were swollen, her face pale. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to drag you into this. I didn't know who else would believe me." And in that moment, the anger I felt softened. Because I saw her not as the woman who had pulled me into a dangerous game, but as someone trapped so long in silence that she didn't know how to ask for help anymore. I sat beside her, placed the phone gently in her lap, and said, "You don't have to do this alone. Not anymore." For the first time, she didn't look at the stairs. She didn't flinch at the sound of the house creaking. She just closed her eyes, letting the weight of the years lift off her shoulders, if only a little. The night ended without another word from Daniel. But the next morning, when I left that house, I carried the draft email with me. I didn't know if Claire would ever send it, or if she'd find the strength to start over. But I knew one thing. If anything ever happened to her, the truth wouldn't stay buried. Sometimes, the scariest secrets aren't the ones hidden in the dark. They're the ones spoken in whispers, too fragile to say aloud, until someone finally listens. And that night, for the first time, Claire's silence was broken.